How's it going? And welcome to the first top 10. And I'm glad to share it with my good friend Nick Hall. Say hi, Nick.
Hello, everybody.
Yeah.
You probably also know me on Twitch as Cliche Gamer 1995. For those of you watching the video, I know who you are. Not really. But if you ever do see me in maybe Mitch's stream or any stream on Twitch, hey, just give me a shout. Say, hey, I know you. You're Cliche Gamer. And I'm like, oh, yeah, I am Cliche Gamer. And like, don't, yeah, or like, some people be like, yeah, you're Cliche Gamer, but I know you from Mitch's top 10 video. I'll be like, oh, okay. Mitch is a good buddy of mine. Something like that.
Yeah. And actually, Nick gave me a request in my Movie Monday video. I think that was Miracle. Am I wrong?
Yeah, that was Miracle. Yep,
That was
that was the
Miracle.
most recent one.
Right.
Well, it's not the one you recently uploaded. It was the one before that,
You're right.
last week's.
And if you guys want to watch, I'll post the link in the description below.
You
So
can.
let's get on to it. As you can see on the left here, there's a top 10 that Nick and I worked very hard to put together for you guys. So, number 10, we put fighting there. The reason fighting is there because everybody likes to watch fighting. It's a bunch of action. You get to see blood. You get to see tears. Some people may have a broken nose, concussion. Why not? But
It's yeah, you can get through a lot. I mean, like it takes a lot for it's heavily transitioning, but anyway, but like for fighting, it's like you can't really fight in any other sport. Football, you get ejected. Basketball, you get ejected. Baseball, you get ejected. Hockey, you fight. It's 5 minutes. It depends on the severity of the fight. I mean, like if it's a line brawl, that's a whole separate thing. But like most general fights in hockey are usually dealt with accordingly.
yeah. And I'm glad you mentioned 5 minutes because now we go on to penalties as number 9. Now, the reason I like penalties there is because when you're penalized, you're out for like a certain amount of time. Like tripping is 2, fighting is 5, like Nick said. So, yeah.
I
But
mean,
when
you
you
can look at,
go on,
but yeah, I know I'm cutting Mitch off a lot, guys, and but like we are kind of sharing a different, or well, same perspective, but different. Like you catch what I mean. But the thing is with like um, penalties is the fact that in other sports it's with football you get flags and eventually you get thrown out if it's excessive, and then with basketball you get thrown out of the game. Well, not thrown out like thrown out of the game, but you get benched for the rest of the game. Baseball, you don't really have, you have outs and all that, but like usually it resorts to like fighting and all that. You get ejected for it after a certain point. Intentionally hitting a person. Like in hockey, if you cross check. I mean, there's a difference between majors and minors. Like minors, you only get a couple minutes. Majors, you get up to 4, and sometimes if you get a game misconduct, you're unfortunately forced to leave the game for about like 10 minutes. But even then, I mean, it's not that bad.
right. Now, let's go on to number 8. It's most intense. Now, I know you put that there, so if you like to explain that.
It's the most intense in the fact that, in basketball, you're running back and forth with basketball, and you can't really make physical contact with players. Football, you have to wait for a snap of QB, otherwise, if you're offline or if you jump too early, you get penalized. For baseball, obviously, you don't charge anybody. It's not really a contact sport unless you're like, I don't know, something's there's certain circumstances that you have to, but anyway, another tale for another time. But for hockey, for it being the most intense, I mean, you can check, you can get in the scrums. I mean, like it's like especially with like the rivalries out there, like Pittsburgh and Philadelphia, New York and New York, New York and New Jersey, Philadelphia, New Jersey. I mean, none of these are more of like the Metropolitan Division for all you NHL fans out there. Um, but like for the big, like the really intense rivalries, even like Canada, like you see like all the big fights, big hits, scrums, the whole bit.
Right. Now, as we go to number 7, it's the atmosphere. Now, if you could explain that, because I'm like a little iffy on that, but
The atmosphere is more or less the fans. I mean, like this is actually going to appear a little later in the list, but I know the fans especially. It's like you're either going into a crowd where like you're rooting for the home team. If your team's home and there's some away visitors or whatever, I mean
okay,
everybody's going to look down upon them. And usually the vice versa can be said for you. Like, on the road, nobody likes the road team. When you're at home, everybody loves the team. You know what I mean? It's just the fans create a positive and or negative atmosphere depending on, what the situation is. Or
Right.
the case is, for that matter.
Right. We'll get on to fans a little later on in the list. So for the next one, number 6, is fast paced, which I like. It's quick. The skating was just like up and down, up and down, up and down. And with this, is that they don't want to stop. It's like they can't stop unless the puck's out of play or it's a penalty. But unlike with basketball, there's out of bounds which stops the clock. With hockey, there's no out of bounds. So you can go on and on unless the puck goes out, like I said. So you got anything to add on for that one?
For that one, no, not really. I mean, like, yeah, it's a fast-paced game. There's a lot that goes on. You can go through, like, I mean, you can basically be, like, going back and forth between, like, getting your share of chances. I mean, like, yeah, you may get pinned in your own zone at one point, but the same thing applies to basketball. Only difference is you could actually, like, you can easily counter rush the opposition, and it can always go back and forth. It just depends. You don't want to. It's just getting in the whole actual aspect, but like even so, it's just the pace of the game. It's so nice to follow. It's a good change from like football or basketball or baseball. It's like for some of the slower sports, it's like, eh.
Right, that's a good point you brought up. Now for number 5, that's it, we're in the top 5, we're halfway there. So for number 5 is the history. Now, every sport has history, which I love sports history. Like, if people can ask me, like, a historical question, I can answer. But with hockey, I believe it has more impact because before, like, they played without helmets, with the 1980s Olympics, the USA versus Russia, which I mentioned in the movie Monday Miracle, which is great. Like, history is very big. Well, you got anything to add on for that?
Yeah, it's like you had like especially before concussions were like a big thing with like a lot of sports today. It's like you didn't really leave the field, or you didn't. Well, I mean, in this case, you didn't leave the ice unless you were being carried off in a stretcher by the EMD. It was and especially like a lot of the whole like the cheap goals and the cheap shots and all that. I mean, like they didn't really regulate that.
Mm-hmm.
Back in the day, they were so much more lenient, and like because of concussions and all the other a list of injuries that go on to this day, it's like they've tightened up so much on the rules. It's like you have to appreciate the history. Where it's like if you batted a puck out of the air over a goalie's shoulder today, that would count as a no goal. But if you did that back in like, the early, like when hockey was still growing to be a popular thing, it would count as a goal. Or if in, Miracle's case, if you took out the goaltender, like if you took out the goaltender today, then you get penalized. If you took out a goaltender back in the day, where like you ran into him physically and then someone else shot the puck in the net, then it counted as a goal.
Right, right, right. Well, I honestly think nowadays they're becoming more safety precaution. Like back then, they would not have kept. Oh no, I got punched in the jaw. Well, keep going, you're fine. So from that covers history. Now, as I mentioned earlier about the fans, which is number 4 now, the most dedicated fans, because as I recall, the Flyers, the fans are insane. Like they go to every home game, they go to every away game. It's just intense. Now, like in basketball, there's some things tanking, but not with hockey. If the team is doing bad, they still go out and support them. Like with basketball, the Sixers, which I am a fan of, I am a fan of the Sixers. They don't go to the games because they know they're gonna lose, which I don't like. Well, that covers my part. You got something to
I
say?
mean, like, yeah, it's just like, you know, this is kind of biased of us because we're both Flyer fans, but like, I'm pretty sure any other fan, any of you other fans, you can sound off in the comments of what your fans are. I'm watching if you're any Penguins or Rangers fans. But in any case, it's like, when you have a tough season and you still stick with the team regardless of like what the circumstances, like if you're just like going through a season where it's like it's tough with coaching or it's tough with certain players or like you just need a complete, rebuild. I mean, that's basically what we're going through right now, essentially. I mean, Mitch can probably back me up on this when I say, like, some teams in the league, they've been going through rebuilding for a long time, or they're still going through rebuilding, and, some of them just aren't complete, You have to really, like, you know, give it time. I mean, I know a lot of people are really, have been really, we've been going through, like, a drought of some sort, and so a lot of other teams have, too. It's like some teams haven't even won the Stanley Cup, so it's
Right,
like...
right. Now, Stanley Cup, as you mentioned, is number 3. Now, if you don't know what the Stanley Cup is, which I'm surprised if you don't, if you're watching this video,
Then you are not a hockey fan.
correct.
I'm just kidding.
The Stanley Cup is the biggest prize. Like, everyone is fighting for that through the beginning of the season to the end of the playoffs, which is like everyone's fighting for. You gotta have the chance to hold up that title, skate around and be like, I did it. I finally did it. We did it. We are the champions. Come and beat us if you think you can beat us. But, yeah, go for it. Try to beat it. And the Stanley Cup is a major accomplishment. Like I just said. You got anything to add?
It's like we all, yeah. It's hockey's a team sport. It's like in a lot of championship speeches rather. Um, they say that like we did this, we did that. It's better along the lines instead of like opposed to like basketball where it's like I did this, I did that. It's not so self centered as a sport and like at the Stanley Cup and the thing about the Stanley Cup is that I know Mitch probably didn't mention, but like it's always moving every season. It's like not one, not it's not all the time that one team consistently holds on to the cup. Like with last year, LA won the cup, LA Kings for a lot of
Yeah.
But like now they're eliminated from postseason, so that the cup's going to be moved to whoever wins this year.
Right.
Obviously, I mean we're still kind of in like it's kind of the finals right now, and we won't really get into like actual Stanley Cup finals rather until like late June-ish, May-ish, something like that.
Okay. Yeah. Now we go to the top 2 dose. And now number 2 is the talent and skills. Like, admit it. It's so hard to skate up and down the ice, to move the stick, move the puck. Your mind's got to be going all different ways. And these players are just like, look, I'm just skating down the ice, look. I mean, it takes so hard to do it. I had a hard time roller skating. I remember when I was at a field trip with a group, I tried to stand up, and I fell like that. Like a second later, but thank God I didn't get hurt. So, yeah, it's very hard. You agree?
It's tough. Yeah, I can agree. It's especially tough for like someone who's more of a street hockey guy. I mean, I play street hockey with friends. Like in case you guys didn't know, you get to know me a little bit more as me and Mitch do these kinds of videos. Aside of all that, but like growing up on street hockey, I've always played for running. It wasn't really for like roller skating or like being on the ice. It's like trying to put me on the ice. It's like it's tough. It's like you have to adjust to the style when you get to the NHL level. Like high school, it's easy to adjust because like you're in a familiar environment. But then once you get to college and if you start getting scouts looked at or if scouts start looking at you, varying on your competitive level,
Right.
you have to keep up with the pace and the professional level. You know what I mean? It's tough. There are some very few select talented players out there, but it just depends on who you are. I mean, if you want to be the future of the NHL, then hey, go for it.
Yeah. Now, number 1 is the players. I mean, without the players, admit it, there wouldn't be any hockey. Like, what would we be watching? The pucks standing still from face-off? Like, the ref drops and be like, 20 minutes is just doing here. Standing here. Watching a puck. No fights. No brawls. It's just like watching a puck just stay there.
It's essentially the equivalent to watching paint dry.
I agree 100%. Now, the players keep it interesting. They're so good with the fan base, like Make-A-Wish.
Oh
Um,
yeah.
that's huge. They
I mean,
can't
like,
go on.
yeah, there's players that are like, they help not only like Make a Wish, but like they have like they are like the biggest. Like, I don't want to sound like soft one until I say that, but like they are the biggest teddy bears out there. Like hockey players, you can agree, are like the biggest teddy bears you'll ever meet out in the world because like they're not afraid to like they're not afraid to be a little silly from time to time or play around from time to time. Like they know when it's time to get serious and they know when it's time to just mess around. Like and especially with like the fan base, that like it mentioned saying like with the Make a Wish Foundation, where like they grant people's like if they want to see a game, like for like one girl who was in Chicago, a former Flyer, Patrick Sharp, actually showed a girl, um, or actually got her to her first hockey game with the Blackhawks, and sure enough, that she had such a great time. Yeah, the Blackhawks lost, but hey, she had a pretty good time.
Yeah.
The hockey players contribute, heavily with a lot of like, making the fans happy. For like Thanksgiving or like the holidays, they like do like feasts, or not really like feasts, but like they make up like baskets and the whole 9 yards for like people who don't really have Thanksgiving or like that don't really can't afford the materials to like celebrate certain holidays, and it's like it really makes up for the fact, and it really puts a positive reputation on like a lot of teams, even though a lot of teams don't have a lot of, or certain teams don't have a whole lot of positive representation because of their names.
Right. Now, I haven't been to a hockey game in literally years. Literally years. I mean, I remember the last game. It was Flyers against the Red Wings. We lost 3-0, and we were in a box. It was a great experience. I want to go back. I'm just like dying to go back. That's why the players keep it so interesting. And as I'm talking about players, I want to bring up my favorite player, Scott Hartnell. Even though he's not on the Flyers now, I still like to see him. He's a great player and all that. I mean, without players, we wouldn't be talking about hockey right now. Me and him
Exactly.
would probably be talking about what, video games, whatnot. We'll probably who knows, but yeah. So you got anything to say before we sign off?
I mean, yeah, there's really like especially making this list. It was a really big honor. Thank you very much for including me in.
Yeah, no problem.
But like having to go through like especially explaining the top 10 lists, or a top 10 list of like why hockey's such a great sport. It's like it really brings out the colorful ideas of like how one thing is the best or one thing isn't so great or one thing is great, or it goes on and on like that basically. But like you know it's a good sport to watch, and if you're really not into hockey, or if you're just someone that watches a game or two here and there, and or maybe you're not so much during the regular season, but you go into like postseason when it gets really like intense. I mean, hey, give it a look. It's a really good sport to watch. Don't get me wrong. It's like you can't really compare it to like other big names, or not really even big names, but like other names out there, like basketball with the finals, or football with the Super Bowl, which is like one big thing and then that's it. But like, it's just there's a lot more than just we could probably put on the top 10. And keep in mind, these are our personal opinions. So like, I understand if you may have varying opinions. If you are other fans, then I can understand as well. But I mean, yeah, that's basically all I have to say. It's a good sport, and if you don't already watch it, or if you just want to give it a look once sometime, hey, now's a good time.
Yeah. So that concludes our video. I would like to thank Nick for joining me. You'll probably see him in more videos to come. Maybe when the Stanley Cup comes, like the best two teams, maybe we'll have like a prediction or something. You up for that?
I could do that, sure.
Alright. So don't forget to leave a comment, a like below if you like this content, if you want to see more. And don't forget to subscribe. Alright guys, keep it real. Talk to you later.